I'm the admissions tutor here at Trinity College and a lecturer in politics and international relations.
I'm Lizzie, I'm the school liaison officer at Trinity, so I work with schools doing visits and talking to them about how great Trinity and how great Cambridge is. I also graduated from Cambridge. I didn't go to Trinity, but I work here now.
People are just filtering in at the moment. I think they're just clicking on the join link. We have 43 at the moment, people joining us. Just to assure you, we can't see you, so you're welcome to pull whatever face you like as we talk. We are going to be talking for the next hour or so about the college. A number of you have already sent in questions. A number of you have sent in questions when you registered. If you would like to send in questions as we talk, please feel free to use the Q&A button that you see at the bottom of your screen. We can see those questions as they come up, and we'll answer some of them as we go. Don't use the chat function if that's okay. Use the Q&A function so we can just have one window open so we can see what you're asking at the time. We'll first answer some of the pre-sent questions and then turn to some of the questions that are sent during the session. So think of questions as we're talking initially. But just to say a bit first about the college. Trinity College is a lot of different things. It's magnificent buildings and wonderful gardens stretching out over both sides of the river here in Cambridge. It's a community of scholars and researchers who over the past 500 or so years have transformed our understanding of the world, from the physicist Isaac Newton to poets like Tennyson and Byron to philosophers like Bertrand Russell and Ludwig Wittgenstein. On to key modern day thinkers and scientists like my colleagues Amartya Sen, Greg Winter and Didier Queloz, all of whom are Nobel Prize winners in their respective subjects. It's a lively and engaging set of students, highly engaged with what we do in the college, about 1,000 undergraduates and postgraduates together who play sports, music, engage in gaming, put on dramas, debates, parties here in the college. It's also, well, it's the home of football. I have to mention that this week. It's a bit of a stretch, I know, but I have to mention it. The rules of football were laid down here at a meeting in Trinity College in 1856, a little bit before our time, and they were adopted by the newly created Football Association and then spread to the world. So since the rules were written here, we like to think of ourselves now, at least this week, as the home of football. So when you hear somebody saying that football's coming home, you can tell them that the home they're referring to is Trinity College, Cambridge, maybe not. Okay, and most importantly of all, Trinity is a community of learning, joined by 200 new enthusiastic undergraduates each year across a very wide range of different subjects, from subjects like linguistics and history and philosophy and politics, to subjects like medicine, mathematics and natural sciences. And that's, of course, why you're all joining us today, to find out if this is the sort of place you'd like to come to study, and if so, how to make a competitive application. So we're going to be answering some of the questions that you've sent in already, and then we're going to be turning to some of the questions that you're sending in at the moment through the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. Firstly, let me throw one of the questions to you, Lizzie. One of the questions that we have sent in beforehand was, everybody applying to Trinity will be of a very high standard. How do I make my application stand out? Lizzie, over to you for that one.
I think it's important to remember that it's not a tick box jumping through hoops exercise to apply. You know, people will have great grades, people will, you know, look excellent on paper, but what we're really looking for are people who are really passionate about their subject and they're willing to go above and beyond because they're just so interested in, you know, a specific topic or a specific formula or just anything like that. So we're looking for students who, you know, will do all their learning in school and obviously be great at it because that's their subject, but who will also go home and research things to kind of like further their knowledge and to stretch themselves. So I think making your application stand out isn't a case of like getting 100% in every single test ever that you've ever touched. It's about really kind of like understanding what kind of student you are and developing your own interests so that, you know, when you do go to interview or if you have a pre-written test where you need to write about some of the things that you've been learning about or reading, you have lots of things to say. So I think rather than just getting really, really stressed about the specifics and being like, everyone's going to be amazing, we're just looking for students who are passionate and who that we can teach. So We're looking for someone who will go into an interview, speak really passionately, and they might not get everything right, but they're able to be taught. So rather than just don't stress about it. You're applying because you love your subject. So just keep reading about the things that interest you. Maybe make a record of certain articles or journals that you've read that have really, really piqued your interest, or any specific kind of niche interest that you have. And just continue sort of stretching yourself and building your knowledge. That's really all you can do. There's no kind of secret thing that you can do to make yourself stand out and instantly get an offer.
Trinity is part of the wider University of Cambridge, and a lot is shared between Trinity and other colleges. So we've got quite a few questions that were sent in before about what makes Trinity distinctive. So, for example, we have a very good question. What distinguishes Trinity tutorials, supervisions is the term we use here in Cambridge. What distinguishes Trinity supervisions from other Cambridge colleges? And actually, the answer is not very much. All colleges in Cambridge adopt a system whereby there's the lectures that are provided by the university, the overall course structure, the individual exams that you take at the end of the year, all provided by the central university. The colleges are responsible for supervisions, and we all have a similar supervision format across different colleges. So it's not as if you'll be taught in a different way fundamentally at one college compared to another. However, at Trinity, what we do like about Trinity is that you are being taught by some of the leading people in the college and the subject. We have distinguished scholars, and right from the start, they engage with the students in their subject. So, and there's the continuity that comes with that, because you get to know them well over the course of the course that you're being taught. And then that because they're here, because they're in the college, they get to know you well and help feed into your interests and develop those interests over not just that individual course, but over the 3 or 4 years of the degree programme. So because we have a very engaged community of scholars here who get to know the students well, who like the process of teaching, they're all here because they enjoy the process of teaching undergraduates. Because of that, I think there's that continuity that comes over the 3 years with regard to Trinity supervisors, which we think benefits the students, not just in the individual courses, but over the longer term, and thinking about what to go on to after their degrees are over, and thinking about whether to do further studies or what field of work they want to go into. We think that continuity comes from the engagement of our supervisors and our fellows in the academic process that you go through. Okay, we've got, sorry, Lizzie, sorry.
Oh, no, sorry. We had a few questions about, someone asked kind of almost, what's the point of applying to Trinity if it's harder to get in? Lots of questions about, is it true that Trinity is really hard to get into? The answer is no. We get this question a lot. I think Trinity has a certain reputation that is based mainly on kind of just misconceptions. Trinity is a big college. Trinity takes a lot of mathematicians, but it doesn't mean that it's harder to get into Trinity than any other college. So apply to Trinity if you want to apply to Trinity. Someone kind of asked, oh, if we get the same education, why bother applying to Trinity? Apply to Trinity because it's a big college, because it has great facilities. You'd be part of a massive community where there's always lots going on and lots of people to meet. With any college that you apply to at Cambridge, there's a risk that you don't get into your first choice college, but if you are good enough to get into Cambridge, you will be reallocated to a different college via the pool. And that's just a way of almost standardizing all applications so that, there is no college that's easier to get into, and you can't play the system by applying to a less popular college and get in with lower grades. The pool ensures that really good applicants who apply to Trinity, who we can't take just because we don't have infinite space, get popped into the pool with a really strong recommendation from interviewers who say, this is an amazing candidate, take this person. And then an undersubscribed college who might not get as good applicants or might get as many applicants, will take them, and then they'll get a place at Cambridge. So for the person who was kind of oh, why should I apply to Trinity? You should apply to any college because you want to live there, because if you end up getting in, you'll spend at least 3 years of your life there. So apply to somewhere because you want to actually live and spend your time there and study there.
I should explain that we spend an awful lot of time behind the scenes in ways that you don't immediately see, in ensuring that no student who we think is very good, who's capable of doing extremely well in the degree programme, but whom we don't have a space for, who applies to us, gets the opportunity to be reviewed by other colleges as well, so they can compare them with the applicants they get directly. And so, for example, to give the most obvious example, which illustrates how this works, in mathematics, we receive a very large number of applicants. 2 years ago, we received the record number of applicants to any subject ever in Cambridge, which was 320 applicants to Trinity to study maths. Out of those 320, we take about 40 per year. But then on top of that, about 60 were offered places by other colleges through the pooling system. So as a whole, almost 1 in 3 of our applicants in maths was taken by Cambridge, though only 40 of those were taken by Trinity. So that gives you a sense of how it plays out, with applicants who are very good getting taken seriously, not just by us, of course, who receive your application in the first place, but by other colleges if we don't have space to take all the wonderful applicants that we get ourselves. We've got a question about, which almost follows on from this, which is that about international students and about STEM subjects. So it's both about whether we have a higher proportion of STEM students and a higher proportion of international students. We do have a significant number of international students. We're a very diverse college. So roughly around a third of our students in any one year at undergraduate level are from overseas, from outside the UK. Which is high by most Cambridge standards. At graduate level, it goes up even more, and at staffing level, at the teaching staff, it's even more so. But we're a very diverse college in terms of the number of applicants. We have among our undergraduates last year, across all 3 years, across all 4 years, we have 85 different nationalities represented. It's a very diverse college, drawing students from around the world to its degree programs. It is still a slight minority, around 35% of students from overseas. STEM subjects, the answer to that is slightly slanted towards STEM students at the moment. The ideal of the college is to take 50% arts and humanities, 50% sciences. However, the number of applicants we get in science subjects is significantly more than the number of applicants we get in arts and humanities subjects, and so that ends up factoring into the number of students we actually end up taking. So at the moment we're roughly 60% maths and sciences, 40% arts and humanities. Though I hope that doesn't, that encourages arts and humanities students who would like to have a place here to continue to think of applying, because we would like more applicants in the arts and humanities subjects. We'd like more applicants in the sciences subjects as well, but we get a lot of those already. So, so across the board, we're keen to review your application to see what we make of it, to see if you think you've got the motivation to do well here in Cambridge. And we treat every applicant on its own terms. We see it, we judge it according to standards that are trying to identify who the best applicants we are, irrespective of your subject or your background. Lizzie, have you seen any questions that were present that we haven't answered?
I've got some in the Q&A.
Okay.
So will undergraduate students be able to take additional courses during the weeks in which terms are not going on, so the holidays? So a nice thing about Cambridge, a quite unique thing about Cambridge, is that we have very short terms. They're only 8 weeks long, which means you have very long holidays in which you can do whatever you want. In terms of like additional academic courses, you might want to spend that time sleeping and relaxing and doing your vacation work, but you can definitely. Another great thing about Trinity is it offers so much financial support. So especially in the long vacation, which is the sort of summer break, if you want to go traveling, if you want to do some research for a dissertation or a paper, you can be offered funding for that. So there's plenty of opportunities to sort of like travel and take on extra projects during the breaks. But no, I would definitely recommend at least relaxing for a bit of the vacations, because the terms are quite short and intense. So you might not want to leap into doing a massive course, but definitely over the summer and the longer breaks, yeah, you can do whatever you want.
Just a couple of specific ones there. Firstly, quite a few of the students, especially in the arts and humanities, do language courses as well. And I think that's one really good thing that we provide both in Cambridge and in Trinity specifically. There's a very good language centre here, and Trinity provides funding for students who want to learn an additional language or refine their understanding of a language they already partly know, to bring them up to fluency. And quite a few of my students in politics and international relations do language courses over the summer. It's not compulsory, it doesn't count in any formal way towards your degree, but it is an additional skill that many students find useful to develop. There's also a summer studentship program that we run from Trinity, where existing students can essentially stay over the summer to work on a research project in combination with a supervisor. And a good number of Trinity students who do want to stay for at least part of the summer, who don't just want to go away and sleep, do end up staying over the summer, especially between their second and their third year, if they're on a 3-year degree program, or between their third and fourth year, if they're on a 4-year degree program, to do research work that will feed into their dissertations in their final year. So that's another facility that we offer at Trinity, which I think is very well appreciated by the students who take it up.
So we've had a few questions about how do you get across all of your reading and all of your interests on a personal statement that's quite short. So we understand that personal statements are short and that you're not going to be able to talk about everything that you want to. I think my best advice is when you're speaking about your interests and things you've read, definitely go for quality over quantity. Don't just list a list of books that you've read and say nothing about them, because you know a lot of applicants will have read lots and lots of things, and we understand that you can't put all of that in one personal statement. So maybe just be selective about what you choose and be critical. So maybe choose 2 or 3 books rather than a whole list of them, and in those 2 or 3 just write a sentence or 2 about this really made me think X, or this then led me on to go and investigate this. And then sometimes it's a bit of a springboard for the interview. It might come up, someone might say, oh, you mentioned that this led you to this, so can you tell me a bit more about it? And that's when you get to expand and go into as much detail as you want. But the personal statement does have to be short. There is the character limit, so just be selective and just pick a few things that you can then expand on at a later date in an interview.
Can I just take 2 questions? One question, which I'm actually just going to refer you to the website, is we've had quite a few questions about the number of applicants in particular subjects compared to the number of students we take in those subjects. How many students do you take in law per year? That sort of type of question. And how many applicants do you get each year in computer science? Those figures are all on the website. So I'm not going to go through each subject individually and tell you the numbers, because you can look it up for yourselves. On the Trinity website, trim.cam.ac.uk, if you go to the undergraduate pages, on each of the subject pages, you'll see the number of applicants we've had over the last 3 or 4 years and the number of places that we've offered to students in those subjects over the past 3 or 4 years. And then finally, the number of students who actually take up their places here. So 3 different numbers for each year that you'll see on the website for each subject. One thing you'll notice is that it varies quite a lot from year to year, and some students think that's a bit odd that we take 5 students one year and 7 students the next year and 3 students the following year in a particular subject. And that's because we really do judge on quality. If we happen to get a very strong number of applicants in, say, for example, history or in psychology or in archaeology in any particular year, then we'll find a way to offer them a place among our intake of 200 students. There aren't quotas by subject, with one exception, medicine, there aren't quotas by subject. And so we are looking for the strongest applicants in particular subjects, across the board, and then we'll work out a way to ensure that they're all receiving high quality teaching in that year, in that time that they're here. So you'll see the variation in individual subjects. The one exception is medicine, because there is a government quota on the number of students that can be taken by any university, which is then divided up between the Cambridge colleges, and we take in 12 medics per year. But that's the only stable one out of all the different subjects that we have. We've got one question in the Q&A, which I want to just say a bit more about, which is about how the interviews will run this year. Because this is one that I think just requires a little bit of explanation. Interviews this year for all Cambridge colleges are going to be done remotely. This was done in 2020 amidst the pandemic. We've decided we'll carry it on for 1 more year, just to eliminate now any uncertainty about how things will go. We're going to do them all by Zoom, the mechanism you're all using at the moment, so you're all familiar enough with it already because you're here. We'll be doing the interviews by Zoom conversations. In most subjects, that will just be a conversation that we do with you online, which won't actually feel all that different from if you were just sitting in my office. It will feel like very much the same sort of type of conversation. And you can be wherever you like for that Zoom call. You could be at home, you could be at school, you could be wherever you feel most comfortable. It's up to you to decide where you would like to be for that interview. And a number of our applicants this year who gave us feedback said that they liked being able to be somewhere they were comfortable rather than sitting in an office that was unfamiliar to them for their interview. So it was good to get positive feedback about people's experiences of the interview. But so the interview will be remote. For most subjects, it will just be an online conversation or set of conversations. For some subjects, which is most of the science subjects, except for except for psychology and economics on the arts and humanities side, we will be expecting you to see your work in the course of the interview. And so for that, what we are encouraging all our interviewees to have is some sort of drawing tablet. It could be an iPad, or it could be a tablet like this, in which we see you're working during the course of the interview. So you write on the pad and it shows up on the screen. And that becomes the basis around which we see you're working in, say, for example, mathematical equations or graph drawing in economics, that sort of type of thing. These things cost around, well, you can get them for under £40. The version I've got here is sort of £45. So I'm afraid there's a bit of additional cost that goes with that. We do refund students who are from low-income backgrounds and do ask when you apply about getting a refund for your iPad, your drawing tablet, if you are from a low-income background. We're happy to do that. But for most students, we imagine this will be something that you'll find yourself using anyway in the future. It's the sort of thing that's becoming increasingly normal in a university setting to use. So if you're applying for a science subject anyway, you'll probably either have already or want to get one of these drawing tablets. And so it's a worthwhile investment. You obviously won't need to be paying for travel expenses to come to Cambridge. So I think for most of our interviewees, it will actually be cheaper to do it this way. The one thing to stress is that if you do need to use a drawing tablet in your interview and you are not used to using one, please practice. It only requires a couple of hours of practice, I think, before you can do it without thinking about it, without having to sort of concentrate on how you're moving your hand when you're using it. But obviously, if it's the first time you're using it in the interview setting, you'll be focused on the mechanics of doing it and not on the questions you're being asked. So just get familiar with using it, get used to writing out equations or whatever it is that you do on it, so that you won't need to be focused on the practicalities during the interview instead. I think, we've got a lot of information about interviews that we're putting up on the website at the moment. We've just started this interviews 2021 page on the website, which you'll find fairly easily through a quick look through the trin.cam.ac.uk website. There's a special page on the 2021 interviews. At the moment, it's done in fairly broad terms. Over the course of the next few months, we'll be adding more detail about when you'll be doing specific things. So for some subjects, you'll be taking a test immediately before the interview. With some, you'll be doing a test during the interview. So they'll give you a problem in the interview itself and ask you to work through it with the interviewer. And you'll have a slightly longer time in those interviews as a result of that. In some subjects, you'll be given a worksheet to do sort of half an hour or 40 minutes before your interview actually begins formally. And that will be done under conditions of invigilation. And then you'll start the interview by explaining what you could do and what you couldn't do in the worksheet. And you'll talk through with your interviewers any problems that remained or issues that come out of what you've managed to do that could be expanded upon. So the interview, and that's the sort of rather technical information by subject that we'll be putting onto the website over the coming weeks. But broadly, at least, the formats are all now decided and are explained to you on that website page. So, okay, let's look to some more questions. I don't know if that spurred further questions or if we've got some questions we haven't yet answered. Lizzie, have you been looking through this?
We'll take a general one just to give you a break from talking, and so people can add in any responding questions. So we've had a question about accommodation. What's the accommodation like at Trinity? So Trinity is not only the biggest college and one of the biggest colleges in terms of like the people that we admit. So we take about 200 each year. So, and an average sized college would take somewhere around the 120 mark. So Trinity is a big college, also in terms of like land size. And because we're such a big college, it means we can accommodate everybody for the entirety of their degree. So you won't have to go and find a house in second year or sort of navigate that. You get given a room by Trinity for every year that you're doing your degree, which is very nice, very reassuring. And the accommodation really varies. So in your first year, you'll probably be put in a designated fresher block, which is good because it means that you can meet people in your year, people doing different subjects. And we have a building called the Wolfson building where it's entirely freshers. And most of those rooms are en suite, so you can have an en suite if you want. We've also got accommodation in Angel Court, which is near our college bar. Again, entirely freshers, so you get to meet people in your year. And then in the rest of the years, you really get a choice, and we've got a real range of accommodation. So you've got the really pretty rooms in Great Court, which are very old, have antique furniture, have a very Instagrammable view, amazing. You've also got rooms in kind of like Newport, or you've got Hawes Court or Burrellsfield, where the rooms tend to be a bit newer and you have the chance to get an ensuite. It's really, we have so many rooms available that you can really choose to like tailor to what you want. So if you want an ensuite for like all 3 years, you probably can get it. Like you're most likely to get an ensuite. We'd rather live in different parts of the college, live in some old, cool buildings where you can take nice pictures and it looks a bit like Hogwarts. You can do so. So yeah, the accommodation is a real range, and we also have accessible accommodation and accommodation that's adapted for people with disabilities. So that's definitely not something to worry about. Yeah, we don't have one type of room, one type of accommodation, but we have going from the really old to the really new. So there's something for everyone.
We've got quite a few questions about how interviews will work in individual subjects, and what we'll do at the end of this is post the link to the interview page. Let me see if I can do that in a second, just so you can see the information about individual subjects, and so we don't need to run through each of our 29 different degree programs. Thank you very much, Stacey's just posted it, the link to the page on interviews, and so that gives you a sense of how it works for each individual subject. And so hopefully that will address a number of the questions that have come in. A few people have asked how the tablet will be viewed to us, and we use a whiteboard system there. So one slight complication is it's varying between different subjects. Most subjects are using just a Zoom whiteboard facility. Maths is advising you to use Miro or one of the other slightly more professional whiteboard or more technical whiteboard facilities. We're going to be putting that information up on the website soon. It's still 6 months till the interviews, and so we're hoping that you won't be too put out by the fact that it won't be going up just yet as information on the website, but we'll have the technical details specified to you well in advance of the December interviews happening. Okay, we've got a couple of questions about international bursaries. I noticed that a number of people who registered for this session were international students from outside the UK. And we do give a set of approximately 13 bursaries per year to students from outside the UK to come and study here. It's a significant number, 13, but it's not everybody, sadly, who gets an offer from Trinity who's an international student. Out of the bursaries we give, the 13, they're awarded on the basis of merit. So we essentially select the students who we rate most highly out of our international applicants to give them bursaries if there is financial need. So if there is no financial need, you don't apply for the bursary, or your bursary application doesn't get considered further. If you don't have the financial need. If you do have the financial need, then we select on the basis of merit for those 13. So not only do you need to be selected for a place, you need to stand out among those applicants. So it is a competitive process. I'm afraid we can't give more than 13 at the moment, but it is one of the advantages of Trinity in that we are one of the few UK universities which can give a significant number of bursaries to overseas students to come and study here. And that does mean that I hope students who couldn't afford the fees themselves, whose families aren't necessarily able to provide those fees, are still encouraged to apply and are still taken seriously in the application process when it comes to university admissions. So somebody's asked for the name of the tablet I just advertised. It's a Wacom One. I've got the medium-sized one here, which is £45. The smaller size one is £32–33 on certain online retailers. So, and the small one is perfectly adequate for the purposes of an interview. Though, as I say, please do practice. before you come to the interview.
We have some questions about music and sports facilities, both of which are very good at Trinity. So there are a number of music practice rooms that you can book out to use. Some of them have got like fancy grand pianos in, and we also have a college choir. So if you're into singing, you can also do that. And then in terms of sports facilities, we have sports fields. We have like a cricket pitch. Is it a cricket pitch? Green cricket place. We also have a college gym. And we have several like college football, netball, basketball teams. There's a lot of collegiate sport and also collegiate music. So when you get involved in societies, if you get involved on a college level, it's usually very chilled out. You do maybe a game a week. And then if you're really, really into your sport or you're really into your music, you can take that up to maybe like singing in the college, like the choral, the college choir, or you can do like university level sport, which is where you really commit to it and you do it multiple times a week. But no, the music and sports facilities are very good. And then we've also got a big university sports centre, which you can also go to if you want something a bit more professional grade. And then we also have a university like orchestral hall as well. So you'll be spoiled for choice.
Can I answer a couple of the more interview-based questions? We've got one that's asking, is an iPad sufficient for interview? And that's absolutely fine. Yes, iPad is fine. You can do the work that you need to do in an interview on an iPad perfectly well. So that's all clear. We've got quite a few about deselection. What ensures you get selected for interview? Some of that is coming back to what Lizzie said earlier about demonstrating through your application that you have a good academic track record, not necessarily a perfect academic track record, but you've got things there on your academic record which show that you have the potential to be a high achieving university student. But you've demonstrated that you have an interest in the subject that you're applying for, and that interest goes beyond just your schoolwork, being diligent in school. A number of subjects do have pre-interview assessments. These are the tests taken in early November. You have to register for them by the 15th of October, so please do, if you're in one of these subjects, register for it by the closing date. In medicine, it has to be done even earlier than that, in the 1st of October for the BMAT. It's the science subjects except for mathematics and psychology, and on the arts and humanities side, it's economics, land economy, and English, which you register for the pre-interview assessment. And that is an important part of the process of us evaluating your application. These are the subjects that we think actually do have a good amount of information that's brought out through the pre-interview assessment. And we do therefore use it as a significant part of our selection process for who gets invited to interview. For those, I really do encourage you, again, I'm saying this quite a bit this time, but it's important to practice. It's important to have a look at previous tests that were given the last year or two, try out a couple of them, especially try them out in the time limit that's available to you. Because I think one of the most common experiences of the pre-interview tests is that students run out of time as they're doing them, or they find themselves with 5 minutes to go and there's still another 15 questions to answer. And they hurry the last few. And that really does affect your overall mark. These are generally multiple choice tests in the science subjects, whereby you have to get through a fairly large number of questions in a relatively short time period. And so pacing yourself, knowing how to pace yourself, is an important skill to develop in taking those tests and doing well in them. It's one of those things whereby if you do it for the first time, you might think question 2 is quite hard and spend a long time trying out question 2. And then you realize it's just 1 out of 30 odd questions and you've spent a third of your time on that question. That's not a good use of your time. Each question is weighted equally. You've got to get through those questions. And if you're getting stuck on one, just move on to the next one. If you've got time at the end, come back to the one that you're stuck on. But it's just that question of learning how to take one of those sorts of tests and practicing a bit, not overdoing it, not spending weeks and weeks on it, but trying out at least the last couple of years' tests is an important part of preparing for it, for that element of the assessment process in early November. And for those subjects which have the pre-interview tests, this is one of the really quite important parts of the whole process, which leads from from applying to being selected for interview, and then from there being considered for entry. Okay, so just one very specific question we've just got, which I've realized I have not changed on the website. The page about music is very slightly out of date at the moment. It specifies some things which are not going to be on the interviews for 2021. It's the only one I haven't yet updated. And so we'll hopefully do that update on the music page in the next couple of days. So please do check back on that page. The person who asked the question just a minute ago about the music interviews in a couple of days' time. So I'm afraid that's the one thing which I haven't yet updated on the website.
So we've got a question: how do Trinity students take advantage of the college's large endowment, which is a very nice way of wording what kind of financial support is available. So yeah, Trinity is one of the richer colleges, and so students who go here are lucky to benefit from a lot of the bursaries and support. But just generally, regardless of which college you go to, if you are accepted into Cambridge and you've applied for student finance, you're eligible for the Cambridge bursary if you're a UK student. We've just launched like a new version of it, which is exciting. But that's essentially, a bursary is your best friend at university because it's essentially money that doesn't have to be paid back. And the Cambridge bursary is just to support students who are on lower household income with just like living expenses, rent, and just ensuring that they have enough money to do everything that they want to do in Cambridge and they can fully make the most of Cambridge life, essentially. But in Trinity, we have a lot of other, so I mentioned that we've got some travel funds. So if you want to travel in the vacations, or if you want to take a language course, we've got funding for that. There's also funding for equipment, for books, and we also have something that's nicknamed the Fun Fund, but it's called the Dunleavy Fund, and that's essentially for students to pursue anything that's non-academic. So there's even money allocated for students to, do something outside of their studies. So that can be, you want to go to a concert, or you want to go on a trip, or just something like that. So yeah, there's a lot available, and you also have access to a personal tutor who is kind of like your main contact, sort of pastoral stuff, and that includes money issues. So if you're having issues kind of paying your rent, or if you're having issues with expenses, your first port of call will be your tutor, who will sort you out. They're not just going to send you home and be like, oh, deal with it. They will find some way to support you. So yeah, rest assured, all Trinity students and pretty much all Cambridge students are very well taken care of. So you won't be worrying about money on top of your studies.
Just to add in, the launch of the new bursary scheme didn't get much publicity, but just to emphasise that the new scheme does provide a grant from the college to all students on household incomes of less than £62,000 per year. So if you're from a family that doesn't have an income above £62,000 and you get a place here, we'll give you a gift each year on being here to help pay your expenses in Cambridge. And we think this is a generous scheme. It's one of the most generous in the world. It's a well-resourced scheme, but it's also one that applies across all colleges. So it's not just a reason to apply to Trinity, but all Cambridge colleges are participating in this scheme. So students at whatever college you're at will benefit through this scheme. And so we hope no student will have to be concerned about counting the pennies when they're here. They can all participate fully in the extensive social and cultural life of the university, of the town, while they're here.
Question about support for Black and ethnic minority students. And it kind of relates to an earlier question as well, as to like, are Trinity students elitist, that kind of thing. So in my experience, Trinity students aren't elitist. So I work very closely with the students in my kind of like student ambassador scheme. So I recruit students to talk to prospective students like you all are. And they're all so willing to help and all so lovely. And just, yeah, they're a really, really lovely bunch. And all of the students I've met have been so kind and so welcoming. So it's definitely not something to worry about. Once everyone gets to Trinity, everyone is part of the same community. Everyone is an equal. So there's definitely no need to worry about it. And Trinity students don't think they're better than other students. Everyone is a member of the university. Everyone gets the same degrees from the University of Cambridge. So there's none of that kind of elitism. But in terms of specific support for Black and minority ethnic students, we have got a BME officer on our Trinity College Student Union. So that's a member of the student community who is either Black or of an ethnic minority, and they put on events. They're also there in a welfare capacity, so they can support you and help you if you're dealing with any kind of issues. We also host an annual BME dinner, a formal dinner, so students from all colleges get to come and have a formal dinner and just celebrate the fact that they're here and celebrate the kind of like diversity at Cambridge and the fact that we're making a place for ourselves, and that's always really, really lovely. And in the wider university, you've got things like the Afro-Caribbean Society. We've got lots of cultural societies where you can find solidarity and find spaces for people who look like you and who share the same culture. So there is a lot of support out there. And that's also something that if you're comfortable, you can talk to your personal tutor about if you're wanting to find some more of those spaces or you're wanting to find some kind of like solidarity or some societies. So there's a lot available.
A few questions about societies and academic societies and other social societies. One really nice thing about Trinity is our students are generally very interested in participating in activities outside of just the academic, teaching side. So a number of subjects have formed societies that are for students in that subject. And some of those are more social, some of them are just for students in that particular subject to get together and enjoy other interests that are tangentially related to their degree program. Others are much more structured. So for example, Politics Society, which is my students in politics put on debate and speaker events that are more structured around sort of the sorts of things that they're interested in coming out of their degree programs. The good thing is that they're all run by the students themselves. And so if you become a student at Trinity, you'll get a role in shaping what your student society goes on to do, whether it is more just a social event, social events, or whether it's something that is more focused on developing your understanding of the topics that you're studying. Some of them have sort of take on reading group elements whereby students get together and look through texts and discuss them. Others tend to be more oriented towards, internships and professional development. So a lot of those societies have the academic who takes a slightly sort of advisory role towards the society, providing them with contacts and advice. Others tend to very much try and do their own thing. So it's up to you really, if you become a Trinity student, to decide what your society should be doing. Can we stay at the college over the summer holiday? A number of our international students do stay in the college over the vacations. They stay because they don't either have the time or the resources to fly back, especially if they live a long way away. So they do stay over the vacation if they want to. We also, as I mentioned earlier, have a number of students who stay for research purposes over the summer. Say, for example, on the summer studentship scheme, they end up staying to do research over the summer period. So there's those sorts of cases. And then there are students who, for whatever reason, can't return home for whatever reason, often to do with a disrupted home life. And for those students, we are very keen to ensure they have the opportunity to stay in college if they want it. So again, there are a number of different categories of students who stay here throughout the year for different reasons, but there's a quite nice atmosphere among the college as it becomes a bit less, exam oriented, especially after the exams are over in June, and is oriented more towards sort of, maintaining a good community in college over the long vacations. So hopefully that answers some of the questions that you've got on that point.
Someone's asked, would it be possible to start a friendly multi-college events to raise money for charities, etc., or is that kind of thing already happening? And yeah, it is already happening. So we have there are kind of college competitions where I think we have a big student switch off where everyone tries to reduce their energy intake, and then the winning college gets buckets of ice cream or something like that. And there are lots of inter-college fundraisers. We also have a really great initiative which was actually set up by a Trinity student, which is called the May Week Alternative. So May Week is sort of a point after exams where everyone kind of relaxes and goes to parties, but the May Week Alternative encourages people to donate to charity in that time, and then everyone sort of attends a nice garden party to celebrate all the money that's been raised. So yeah, there's a lot of that going on, and there's a lot of societies specifically dedicated to fundraising and charity work that you can get involved with.
A question about the SAQ. So in addition to your standard UCAS application that all students put in October. We also ask students to fill in a separate form, the supplementary questionnaire, which often just asks for more detail, which mostly just asks for more detail about the subjects you've been studying at school. So we want you to list, for example, the particular major topics that you've studied within each of your A-levels, if you're taking A-levels. But we also have a separate point there where you can add any additional information you want to that you didn't get a chance to put in your UCAS application. If you've got nothing to add to your UCAS application, just feel free to leave that blank. You don't need to add any information there. But because Cambridge degrees are often quite distinctive, because there are often clusters of subjects that you're applying for at Cambridge that you aren't applying for on your main UCAS application, this is a good opportunity to add any additional information that's specific to your Cambridge degree that you've applied for as part of your information that you want us to see. So it's often a useful point when you've got a degree program that you're not really addressing explicitly in your UCAS personal statement, which goes, of course, to all the other universities you're applying to. If you want to add something that's specific to Cambridge, then that's the place to put it. But don't feel obliged to put anything there, especially if you feel like it's just repeating what you'd be saying, what you've said already in your UCAS personal statement.
So when employers visit Cambridge, does Trinity have any specific links with companies that help its students secure roles? So university-wide, we have a really great career service, which is for life. So, you know, if I quit my job today, which I'm not, don't worry, Glen, but if I did, I could go to the career service and they'd help me find another job, even though I've already graduated. In terms of Trinity specific, we have a law society and they invite law firms in who can come and talk to the law students and other people about training contracts and stuff afterwards. But in terms of like, if you're worried about getting a job after graduation, please don't be. There's like loads of careers fairs, and in your third year you'll be inundated with like free pens and people trying to get you to apply for their graduate scheme and people wanting to take you out to dinner and talk to you about, you know, what you can do after graduation. So it's completely fine, and that's again something that you can also talk to your personal tutor about, and you can go and talk to the career service and people will support you in finding the position you want to. So yeah.
One of the things we've launched fairly recently at Trinity is a support scheme for internships. So just to flag up, a lot of students, especially between their second and their third year of their, well, actually in each of the long vacations between the first and second year and between the second and the third year, take on for at least part of that vacation an internship at an organisation. And so Trinity's got a scheme for both enabling those internships to come about and putting you in contact with relevant people in your subject, and also helping you with the finances of the internship, because sadly some internships are not fully paid or not paid at all in some cases, but they still may be worthwhile to do. And so we've got a scheme for helping you with paying your way through an internship. Say, for example, paying for your rent if you need to live in a different place for that internship. So we've got a funding scheme also that helps with that, and that's often a good stepping stone, firstly either to deciding whether it's the sort of work you're interested in, whether it's the sort of thing you'd like to go on to after your degree is over, and then secondly giving you the range of experience and contacts. But often it provides a very useful starting point for those future applications to what you want to go on to do. So hopefully the internship scheme is good to serve as a useful stepping stone, as I say, to what you go on to in later life.
Question about the kitchen facilities at Trinity, which caught my eye because it's nearly lunchtime. So a lot of Trinity students eat in hall, which is kind of like our communal space, and you have the option to be fully catered, so you can go to the servery for breakfast, lunch and dinner if you want, and it's a really social place. A lot of people go and eat with friends and it's a nice place to kind of unwind, but if you want to self-cater, you can choose accommodation that has, you know, will have the full shebang, hob, oven, that kind of thing. Some of the kitchen facilities, especially in the older blocks, are a bit basic, but you'll definitely have like a microwave and a fridge and sometimes a hob. But no, if self-catering is really important to you, again, you can sort of tailor your accommodation choices around that and pick places that have good kitchens. So it's up to you if you want to be catered or self-catered.
We have one about predicted grades and offers. And so, of course, when you apply, your school sends us your predicted grades. That matters in that we see if a student doesn't have predicted grades in the subjects which they're most relevant for their degrees, then that if they don't have high grades predicted for them, then we want to know why. And there may be a good reason, but it's up to you to explain that to us if you're not being predicted you know, for example, if you're applying for a science subject and you're not being predicted A stars in your science subjects, then it'd be helpful for you, either you to explain why that is, or for your reference to explain, your school reference to explain why it is that you're not being predicted top grades. So they matter for that reason. That said, almost all of our applicants that we get do have the prediction for at least the minimum standard that we require for entry. So for science subjects, that's in A levels, 2 A stars and an A. In arts and humanities subjects, it's an A star, AA at A level. In economics, it's A star, A star, A, just with the sciences. So almost all of our applicants have that minimum standard already predicted. And so at that level, you know, from there, at least, we're not that, you know, the difference between getting a 2 A star prediction and a 3 A star prediction doesn't really make any difference to us from that level. What matters to us is that everybody's at that minimum standard, at least in their predictions. And that's where things such as then the pre-interview assessments or the personal statements you send to us, or the evidence of other work you've done beyond just your schoolwork comes to matter much more, because the prediction is only the starting point rather than the end point of our assessment. What about the drama scene at Trinity? Lizzie, is this one for you as an English student, a former English student?
I was an English student who didn't do drama, so I was definitely an anomaly, but I watched a lot of drama.
Yeah.
So yeah, there are amateur drama societies in Trinity, but most of the drama takes place kind of like in the ADC, which is the Central University sort of drama society, and it's really easy to get involved with again. So essentially anything you want to get involved with, we have a fair called the Freshers' Fair, and in kind of like your first week you go and there's free pizza, and again societies are giving you free pens and whatnot, but you can sign up to any of these societies and they're all on the basis you don't need experience. If you just want to go and try out rowing, or you want to try out drama, or you want to try out building sets, you can. But no, the drama scene is very good, very active, and it's also quite low commitment if you want to just get a job kind of like painting some sets, or if you want to be involved in being an usher or something like that, you can do that alongside your studies as well.
Trinity is one of the oldest drama societies in the world, the Dryden Society, which tends to be much more sort of formal in the sorts of productions they put on. And so that isn't the end of it. I mean, that's the one that often gets the most attention in Trinity, but there's a lot of other drama societies as well around the university, and that have significant representation in Trinity too. So it's not just the more formal one that is relevant. Quite a few questions about sort of the culture at Trinity, and whether it's more competitive, more academically focused than most colleges. And I think the answer to that is no. I think generally all colleges have some people who are much more heavily focused on you know, their studies, and others who tend to try to maintain a much more varied work-life balance, to put it that way. I think all colleges have that mix of people, and we don't sort of encourage one or the other. We don't have a particularly sort of, you know, sense that, you know, if you're doing things that are not connected with your studies for a large part of your evenings, that's a problem. We don't. We encourage students to take on that wider cultural, social life in the college while they're here. You get opportunities at university which you won't get later in life to try out new activities and to enjoy them. So we hope you do take those opportunities seriously. Because Trinity has a slight, as I mentioned earlier, a slight tilt towards the sciences in its current intake, we tend to have a slightly higher number of those from a scientific orientation here, but I don't think that really does affect the culture in a major way of the college. It's a very diverse college, it's a very open college, it's a college where you're always meeting new people, and therefore at least most people find very quickly in their first year, in their first week of their first year often, people who share interest with them, often quite niche interests, things that you probably haven't met too many other people who share those interests with you, and maintain friendships that span their university lives with those people, which often, of course, then span into later lives after university. So because it's quite a large college, I think there are many different sort of cultures and subcultures within the college, and you find your own sort of your own place you're most happy with quite quickly within that mix. So a couple of quick questions. Could I answer a couple of quick? Can anybody join the Cambridge Union? The answer is yes. The Cambridge Union is open to all students. Do you take STEP as part of a computer science offer? No, we don't tend to offer computer science offer holders. We don't tend to require computer science offer holders for STEP. The only condition in which we do tend to offer STEP for outside of maths itself is if you're applying for a subject which involves a high degree of maths, but you're not taking further maths or equivalent within your A level. So we think highly of you, we think you've got mathematical ability, but because you're not taking further maths A level, we sometimes ask you to take step 2 within that context. It's different for maths, where we ask everybody to take step 2 and 3 as part of your offer. But in other subjects, it tends to be more supplementary to what you're already doing if we don't feel like we can see your mathematical ability through the other exams that you're taking at that more high level. A gap year is looked down on? No, it's up to you to decide whether you want to take a gap year. It's not for us to decide. We have a number of students who apply to us for for deferred places, as we call it, to start in what would be the case in 2023 for applicants in the next round, and that's perfectly fine. We don't treat you any more strictly or less strictly than other applicants. We don't have a different standard, so that's all perfectly acceptable. Question. I like this question. Lizzie, could you go for this one? I think I would like to go to Trinity, but I'm still fairly scared of the competition. If I applied for a different college, do you think I would regret not applying to Trinity?
So my answer is apply to Trinity. So if you're good enough to get into Cambridge, you will get into Cambridge. And if Trinity doesn't have the space for you, you'll be allocated to a different college. But Trinity will be your home for the amount of time you spend with us, maybe 3 years, maybe more than that. And if you've decided that you like Trinity and that's somewhere that you'd like to be in, a community you'd like to be part of, then we would like to have you. And if if your application kind of stands out, we will take you. So I think you just need to back yourself a little bit more. People will be also scared of you as their competition, and there's nothing to say that you're you're less than, or you're not going to be as competitive as someone else. If you've decided you want to go to Trinity, come to Trinity. We would love to meet you, and we'd love to potentially welcome you here. So yeah, don't settle because you think you're not good enough, because Trinity isn't, inherently better or worse than any other colleges. They all make up the same university.
That also applies to another question. If you're interested in a topic, you're able to go to other colleges to meet their fellows. The answer is yes, you always meet people from other colleges. And all of our students will end up being lectured to by people from other colleges through the university lectures. And then especially as you go through your degree, you'll be supervised by the people who've the specialisms that you've selected over the course of your degree program. So especially in subjects that are sort of mid-sized subjects, you're primarily supervised by Trinity people in your first year in Trinity. You're supervised by people who will get to know you very well, by your Doctorate of Studies and by other people associated with your subject. But from your second year onwards, as you start selecting options that are very particular to your own interests, you'll be supervised by people from other colleges and no college as your degree progresses. And often students in their third year do a specialist project, a dissertation or something like that, where you find the relevant person who's best matches those interests across the university, and they supervise you for it. So increasingly over the 3 years, you branch out from just the base of the individual college you're at, and get to know the wider university's experts in the subject that most interest you. I mean, in smaller subjects, you're supervised from the start, right back from people by other colleges, because there aren't enough people in Trinity who can teach you in that small subject. If you're applying to, say, archaeology or Anglo-Saxon, Norse and Celtic, or theology, right from the start, you'll be supervised by people from other colleges. Could we take one more, maybe?
Yeah, one more.
Are there formal dinners at Trinity, and must gowns be worn?
Yes and yes. The formals, I think I came from a state school, no one in my family had been to university, and so when I got to Cambridge and went to my first formal, I was like, oh my God, what is this? But formals are actually really lovely, especially if it's someone's birthday or if you just want to meet up with friends. It's basically a fancy sort of 3-course meal, and you do dress up and you do wear your gowns. And once you get over the sort of Harry Potter sort of comparisons, it is really nice, and it's just like a nice thing to do to celebrate or just to take part in a bit of a Cambridge tradition. I'm sure if you Google pictures of Cambridge formals, you'll see kind of like what everything looks like, but it's basically just a fancy dinner. And the nice thing is it's very heavily subsidized, so it's very cheap, cheaper than going out to a restaurant. So
I should say that you can have a normal dinner as well. You don't have to do fancy dinners in Cambridge. There's every opportunity. I mean, I didn't go to a single formal in my entire time when I was a student. It just wasn't my scene. And so I just had the regular dinners every evening. I didn't go to any of the formals. And that's fine. There are a number of students who just isn't their scene. It's for you to choose, not for us to prescribe. Thank you very much for all your questions. A number of people have asked for questions for statistics on one thing or another. The number of statistics of the number of students in particular subjects, the number of students from state schools in particular subjects, or the number of students from international, all of that information is on the website, and you're welcome to poke around the website. Obviously, poke around the website to see if you can find that information. If you can't find the information on the website, please feel absolutely free to email us with those questions. We can't go through it all sort of item by item, and I don't have all of the data either memorized or on my screen in front of me. So I don't want to sort of give you numbers which might turn out to be wrong in this meeting. But do have a look on the website. And as I say, if you don't find it, then please feel free to email us on admissions@trin.cam.ac.uk.
it's in the chat.
It's in the chat. Thank you all for your time. Thank you all so much for your questions, which have been excellent. And I look forward, I hope, to seeing some of you in the next interview round. And then after that, I hope to see some of you starting your degrees here in October 2022.
Bye, everyone.